Hello and welcome back to Beyond the To-Do List, a podcast about productivity. I am your host, Eric Fisher, and I am excited to welcome back this week Mike Vardy to the show. He's a productivity strategist, longtime friend of the podcast, and author of the new book, The Productivity Diet. In this conversation, we're diving into the language, the systems, and the inputs that you choose each day to either nourish or deplete your ability to do meaningful work. We're talking about that analogy of productivity as nutrition, not punishment. We're talking about creating intentional constraints to have structure around your time and energy and attention, which will help to avoid bringing on urgency and make space for that deeper work. And we're talking all about productivity styles and personalization, making systems that are true to your natural rhythms. Not only are you going to love this book, but you're going to love this conversation with Mike Vardy. Well, it is my privilege to welcome back to the show, Mike Vardy. Mike, welcome back to Beyond the To-Do List.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it, Eric. Looking forward to talking about something that's been in the works for quite some time.
Yeah. And what's funny is I was trying to, for a second, I was going to do that thing where it's like, okay, now think back. When was the last time Mike was here? But I know. It was December, January-ish time when we did the A to Z, and completely had flaked on that in my head till just now. So that's cool. I think before that, though, it had been a while, and that's okay, though.
Well, I mean, you and I we could riff on this like every week, really. I mean, there's so much fodder that we could get into, but it is nice to give people a break from two productivity nerds instead of I think it's each of us in small doses is fine.
Yes, that's a good, minimum viable dose for sure, especially when we're doing things weekly that people are subscribed to and so on. But you've got a brand new book out called The Productivity Diet, a practical guide to nurturing your productive potential. So, all right, why the word diet? Obviously, that's the standout word in that title.
So when I was putting together this book, which initially was going to be called Time Crafting, a better way to get the right things done, I really wanted to go beyond just a process. I wanted to talk more about kind of the lifestyle aspect of things. And when you start to we've read a whole bunch of productivity books over the years, and a lot of it, they talk about ways of operating, approaches, frameworks, etc. And the term diet came to mind when I was thinking about lifestyle, because when I was writing for Lifehack and these sites that generally offer really valuable information, but the term life hack is very much like a crash diet or one of those things that you do for a very brief period of time with the hopes of gaining great gains. And in fits and starts, that can work. But if you want productivity to be something that is sustainable and simple and just kind of a way of living, then you need to make it a lifestyle. It's not a series of hacks. And the term diet suffers from that as well. A lot of people will say, I'm going on a diet, right? And that means that they eventually will go off that diet in most cases. So what you want to do is, and by the way, most of those diets are they can be extreme, right? They can be I'm going to do, for lack of a better term, like the Whole30 or Atkins or anything like that. Again, not to say that these aren't valuable, but they should act as springboards or jump starts to build momentum so that you can foster a new lifestyle. But often what happens is we do it for a short period of time and then we go back to the way things were. So I wanted to draw the comparison to a productivity diet, not in terms of food and what you should eat, but just a way of living. This is your lifestyle. And a proper productivity diet should be something that you can sustain. It's simple. You should have waypoints that help you kind of stick to it. And it should feel frictionless the longer that you keep it, because it just becomes something that you do. It's not just something that you do, it's someone that you are. It's just the way you operate. So to me, it was kind of like my way of saying, look, this is a lifestyle and you don't have to do everything. That a diet shouldn't be everything. And so I wanted to offer some recipes. There's recipes in the book that kind of help you kickstart things. They're in the back of the book. And we're building a companion guide as we're working on this right now that some of the Kickstarter backers will get access to because they backed at a certain level, but we'll have a workbook. And so I offer some recipes in here, but they aren't something that you just set and forget. And that's part of the reason I wanted to kind of explore the term diet, was just to say, hey, it's a lifestyle. And also, let's be fair, diet books do well on bookshelves too.
Yes, that word will do wonders for SEO. I like that you're using it in the, I think I can give a couple of analogies here real quick. One is there's the term climate, where it's, hey, that's generally what the weather is like there long term. Year after year, that is what it is. Whereas weather is what's the weather today or what's the weather this week. Another way is to actually literally use the way we've heard that word diet used before, I'm sure, is when we're watching like nature programs and we see, the fluffy strutted such or such whatever animal lives in this area and its diet consists of, and that's what it eats. Like that's consistent. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate that the word diet has gotten that quick, flash burn mentality to it when it really does mean overarching long-term consistency made up of this, and this. So speaking of that, what is the productivity diet made up of in terms of ingredients?
Well, so the ingredients of the productivity diet, there's really 3 elements, and going back to the elements of time crafting. So what you want to do with your productivity diet is you want to give yourself simple waypoints that you can use as beacons, right? Often what happens, and when I wrote the book together, I talked about the foundations of it. So how to really understand what productivity is about, because I would argue that productivity is similar in that people misconstrue what productivity is as well, right? And so you have to understand it before you can kind of dive in and figure out what your diet should be and what elements of it should what the ingredients should be. Because when I talk about that in part 2, and of course, part 1, I talk about absolutes and striking a balance, but I talk about time theming, and not everybody's going to use time theming, at least not all aspects of it. So it's giving an overarching focus to periods of time, be it the day, the week, the month, hours of the day, which I call horizontal theming, giving your year a theme, which I call your annual axiom. So elements of time theming can help you stick to a diet that will work for you over the long term. And it takes into account things like seasons and certainties that you have in your life. When's your birthday? When are the holidays? Like, that's where time theming comes in. I also talk about attention pass. That's another ingredient of a productivity diet, because sometimes time theming just won't work. Your days are too dynamic. You maybe don't have as much agency over your time. I would argue that there are days that you can theme because you do have more agency over them. And you can use, again, there's like a smorgasbord here that you kind of apply. Some theming and some attention pass. Attention pass, there are 5 different types. We can go into those a little bit later as well, but they are designed to, again, harness your attention to go down a certain path. So whether it's energy, time, resource, again, we'll get into that maybe. But the idea is that you can say, okay, well, I have 5 minutes. What are the tasks I can do in 5 minutes or less? And you're kind of disregarding any kind of themification. So you could just work off of that. And then finally, the third ingredient that I think is really important that, we've talked about before, and I've even alluded to on our podcast appearances, is reflective practice. The idea of reflection, journaling, meditation, these things that can kind of keep you aligned and attuned with the theme periods of time that you may have added, the attention pass that are working well for you. And then from there, once you've got those ingredients dialed in, and again, depending on if you want to get through today, which that's what most people do crash diets for, is to get short-term fixes. You can use these ingredients to have a short-term fix, but you can also use them for a long-term fix, which is ideal. And then part 3, we talk about like kind of the implementation of and sustaining of the diet. And again, I think the key here is to understand that there is no such thing as set it and forget it forever, but you want to be able to have enough things that you can set so that you're not changing things all at the same time. There are seasons to life. And if you have a productivity diet that is seasoned to your life, it's just going to taste that much better.
I love it. One of the things, obviously, because we're here in May and there's a lot of Star Wars talk going on, it's early in the book and you talk about Qui-Gon Jinn, which I believe, if I'm not incorrect, is your favorite Jedi.
Yes. In fact, you can't see it from here, but if you're watching video, I have the Qui-Gon Jinn lightsaber from Disneyland, from the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, that our mutual friend David Sparks got for me when I said, hey, I'm waiting for this thing. And he went to Disneyland. He's like, Mike, it's here. And I'm like, take my money. In the book, I talk about absolutes, the pitfalls of absolutes. And there's this scene in Revenge of the Sith, which also this year just came out. It was re-released at the anniversary in theaters.
Very enjoyable to go see in the theater again.
Yeah. And I could tell you that when there's the line where Anakin and Obi-Wan, spoiler alert, are fighting on Mustafar. Anakin has turned, just for the record, for those of you that have not seen it yet, Anakin turns to the dark side and becomes Darth Vader. I've spoiled it for all of you. But there's a line where Anakin says, if you're not with me, then you're against me. And Obi-Wan says, only a Sith deals in absolutes. And I'm like, that is garbage. The Jedi Order is also about absolutes, perhaps even more so, because they want to keep them lawful good, to use a D&D term, right? But Qui-Gon Jinn did not listen to the Jedi Order. He did not follow that. That's why he was not on the council. And I go into this a little bit, but Qui-Gon listened to the will of the Force, which, frankly, when I draw the comparison in my own life, and you listening right now may feel the same, is that you generally listen to the will of whatever time is presenting you, whatever the tasks that come to mind. And what you want to do is harness that. You don't want to fight it. You don't want to ignore it or avoid it. You want to harness it. So when I talk about, the idea that the Jedi, they forbid attachments, right? They impose strict codes, all that stuff. Qui-Gon was like, hey, what's needed in the moment? Right? Let's not have rigid structures here. Rules are tools and not constraints. I talk about that as well. And then wisdom comes from adaptability, not blind adherence, right? So I also find, and Eric, I've had people ask me this before. They say, so if I'm not doing time theming and I'm not doing attention pass and reflective practice, I'm not time crafting, right? I'm like, no, that's not true. You could do a little bit of each.
That's like saying I'm not a carpenter, I'm not woodworking because I'm not using this tool or that tool.
Right. But there's so many of the frameworks out there that kind of depend or rely on you using all of them for it to work. Otherwise, the whole thing crumbles. You don't want that. If the structure is too rigid, think about earthquakes. Actually, when I was working on the book, tightening it up last April, I was in Toronto. I was staying at a friend's house sitting. And it got really windy. It was on the lake shores in Toronto. And you could feel when the winds got, I could feel I was on the top floor. You could feel the building move. And they leave room for that because you want a little bit of wiggle, because if it's too rigid and it can collapse. You want to build engineering wise. And I don't know all the details. I'm not an engineer. I don't pretend to be, but I do know that they put some kind of safeguards in so that when you're dealing with a building that's got, a ton of floors, they want them to be able to sway a bit, because not too much. You got to find your just right. But the point is, if it was too rigid, then the structure would fall apart. And often we have frameworks and we put structures either in play or we adhere to structures that are not designed for us, and we follow them to the letter and we wonder why they don't work. Well, you need to have some flexibility and adaptability. And if you remember watching the first Phantom Menace movie, there's a scene where the Watto, the alien, rolls the dice and Qui-Gon just kind of moves his hand and the dice land the way he wants. Is that a dark side move? He's manipulating it. So you could argue that
it's debatably unethical, but at the same time, it's more about what's at stake here.
Yes, exactly. The bigger picture, right? So to me, whenever we start dealing with absolutes, and we are living in a world that is increasingly asking us to it's either this or that, black or white, left or right. Just look at social media and the political landscape. Nuance matters, and nuance needs to exist in your system and in your productivity diet, because not everybody's productivity diet is going to be the same. So yeah, I am a big believer in looking at Qui-Gon Jinn, and I've seen videos in the expanded universe where they'll say the Jedi that the Emperor feared the most was Qui-Gon Jinn, because he was unpredictable. He didn't know what he would do compared to what the Jedi, he knew exactly what they would do because they were so absolute and they were so set in their ways. So you want some flexibility built in there, and you can't get that when you're dealing with absolutes.
Okay, one more Star Wars thing. I'm thinking about Qui-Gon Jinn and who his master was, which was Count Dooku.
Yes.
And he turned to the dark side. And I remember seeing a cartoon of this. It was fairly recent, last 2 years, something like that. And it shows young Qui-Gon Jinn see some of the seeds of his fall being sown. And so that definitely influenced him. Then I also can't help but jump forward to Phantom Menace and think, if Qui-Gon hadn't died, would Obi-Wan have gotten to the point of being as blinded as he was, or would he have learned more from Qui-Gon to not spout a sentence like only Sith deal in absolutes? Would he have been more helpful at that critical moment later on, and Anakin maybe a little bit more so?
Would Qui-Gon have abandoned Obi-Wan, or would Obi-Wan have gone with a different, like, there's so many, and again, there's no way to know. But what's interesting is that you listen to Dooku as a villain, and if you look at some of the expanded stuff he did, he also made choices based on what he believed was the greater good and was at stake. So, this is a story that's old as time. A villain is only a villain to the heroes.
Yes.
A villain does not believe.
The best villains are the ones you...
I actually wrote a blog post. I don't think I ever published it, but I wrote it, and it probably will come out someday, where I said, how to Thanos your to-do list from Marvel, right? Like, and what his goal was is to 50%, like, so kill 50%, which, by the way, may not be a bad thing for you to do, is to look at and go, I'm going to get rid of 50% of my things. What does that look like? And you could do that. And by the way, you could also say, I'm just going to arbitrarily snap my fingers and half my to-do list will be gone. That could be a good way to use it. That could be a good way to use that kind of story. But when there have been arguments that what he was doing was actually good for the universe because he was, getting rid of population and stuff. And that is evil. Like, killing people is wrong, but he's thinking about it from that larger perspective. And, people will say, the villain in their eyes, they are devoted to their cause and they don't see it as being evil necessarily. So, I find that when I look at the story of Qui-Gon Jinn, I always like the people that kind of, they're not ambiguous, but they have room to breathe. Vision is another one that I love because he is such a logical, he's a machine, right? Trying to navigate in a human world, and he craves those abilities, those emotions and all that stuff. Whereas us, we would love to be able to shut off our emotions just to get the work done, but we can't do that. And instead of thinking and getting curious, and this is where reflective practice comes in, we push through. We go, all right, I just got to do it. I got to do it. And we don't have ways to look at our to-do lists or our calendars that can serve that balance between emotion and logic, which is reason. And when I see Vision making comments like, what is grief but love persevering? I'm like, that is a really reasoned look at that.
It's more human than some humans.
Exactly. And only humans can tap into reason, right? Because, their emotion is primal, right? And logic is very, artificial, for lack of a better term, or mechanical. There's this great scene in WandaVision where the two visions are circling each other, and their fight is a philosophical mind fight for most of it. And they said, well, who's the real Vision? Is it the body? Like the person that's always been Vision? And just this discussion, and what the answer, and he goes, I am Vision, you are Vision. He couldn't come up with an answer because it was nuanced. And again, that goes back to this idea of absolutism. We are complex, and that can be complicating. If we can give ourselves little clues, little waypoints, remove some of the friction so we can create flow, it allows us to do things that serve not just us, but those around us better. And that involves not looking at the details right away. I think one of the worst things that people can do is look at their to-do list in a sequential order. And the second worst thing is by date. And the third worst thing can be by priority if you have too many of them, right? But notice it's whittling down. I would much rather have someone say to me, Mike, here's your list for today. And I look at it and go, well, what are the things I can do when I have low energy? Oh, like today is a great example because we just had my book launch party yesterday as we're recording this. I did a retreat for my community. I'm at that point. Throughout the rest of the day, I'm not going to listen to my time theming at all because it's editing, and I'm not going to do that.
That's a very honed in, like that's a microscope kind of a thing.
And I can't do that in the state I'm in. But what I can do is say, oh, well, what are my low energy tasks? By the way, there might be a low energy editing task that I've identified. Oh, great. And that's the right kind of dopamine you want. those aren't empty calories. Those are actually going to fill you up. You're going to feel fulfilled. You're going to get closer to your goal. So to me, again, looking at your to-do list through this either sequential lens or this date lens or this priority lens, it's fine to have those. We've used those for a long time, or even by project. You can get too myopic that way too. For me to be able to say, I'm tired, what can I do when I'm tired? And hit 23 things and have me move 4 projects forward and, not get sucked into social media, doom scrolling or emails, which doesn't necessarily have my best interests at heart. I can walk away at the end of the day when I write my journal. Hey, guess what? I was tired, but I got a lot of stuff done today and it was the right stuff. And I could feel satisfied.
I mean, if somebody's listening to this, they're like, one, you guys are talking way geeky sometimes. And hey, sorry, that's who we are. But number 2, this is throwing a little bit of, the standard stuff out the window. Or is it? It's not really. It's more that we're just saying, look, again, if I go back to that rigidity, what we're saying is stop. Like we've been doing, you hear me talk about it this way. I hear you talk about it this way. I like to be refreshing about it. I like to not be pigeonholed into it's like when people ask us what's the best this or the best that when it comes to tools. It's like, it's not about a specific tool. It's about what's going to work for you. And so I guess my thought here is, if we're coming back to this whole recipe diet theme, what are some of the start small type things that people can do that somebody here listening to this could say, okay, you know what? I'm willing to try being more flexible. What can I latch onto? What can I try? Or what's a small experiment? We both talked to, what's her face? I'm blanking on her name.
And Laura.
Yes.
And Laura.
She's great. The book's great. I really want more people to grab that book. So free plug right here. In light of that approach, how can they tiny experiment your book?
Well, I would say, first off, what you were saying there, which was really interesting, is I'm not saying you missed a step, because I know you know what the step is.
Yes.
But if someone was to say to me, which app should I use? I don't respond right away with, well, it depends on what I go, well, what I ask questions.
Right.
What do you use? That is honestly the first step. Like the first step that anyone should take is, I'm not getting this stuff done. What will help me get more stuff done? Is it, if it's a tool, great. Well, what do I use? Like, we often leap to judgment and decisions before asking the right questions, right? So first off, a good, easy, simple thing that people should be able to do, but we don't do it consistently either. And this is something you can sustain, is, do all of my tasks on my list start with a verb? That's a simple way to start, because it does 2 things. Number 1, it can shine a light on patterns that you see on your to-do list. So let me give you an example. If you have a lot of tasks that say plan, prepare, examine, those types of verbs can be batched together for a theme. Let's say it's my planning time, or my, read this, review that, research this, study that. Oh, those verbs all are around researching, reading, studying, etc. Even the examine verb I threw out there, this is my examination time. Well, what fits into that? Well, my reading tasks do, my researching tasks do. So it's really about starting with that verb. Your brain automatically gets a break, because it goes, oh, I don't know what follows this word, but I do know that this means plan. So I better get ready to plan. And then, oh, there's 12 planning tasks. Well, what if I stayed in this modality of planning and just did it for all those things? Oh, look, it's flow. It's, I have less friction. I would start there. That's the one simple thing, is number 1. And the second thing is, when you do this, when you read the book, you'll find one of the attention paths is activity type. That's what the planning is, an activity. So now you've got an attention path that you can follow, which, by the way, can turn into a theme, because often activities turn into themes. Editing, I just mentioned, that's an activity. It's got a verb. ING implies that. Another thing you could do that's simple is you can work back, just sit down and say, what do I know to be true just even start for the week. What do I know happens consistently every week? Okay, I know I have meetings on Mondays. I have this meeting at this time. I know on Wednesdays, my kids have soccer practice. I know that my work day is from 9 to 5. I know that my wife is home on this day. I know that Saturday, everybody's home and nobody works. Get your certainties in front of you. You have to work backwards from those, because as soon as you start to butt heads with a certainty and you haven't taken into account, it's immediately an obstacle that you bring us, well, see, this didn't work. So then you try to shoehorn things in instead of letting them naturally fit. You're putting things in their place, like a mise en place kind of thing, like this is where everything lives. That would be another thing that you can do.
And that's similar to that big, small rock analogy that is popular.
Yeah, and so when I tell people, when I help work with clients and they say, I want to theme my days, I tell them, well, let's look at your calendar 4 weeks from now. And they're like, well, I want to look at next week. I'm like, next week's already set. And so but 4 weeks from now, we will see your certainties far more clearly because there's not as much stuff going on in your calendar. Very rarely do people book out like events a month out unless it's a special occasion or it's something that's consistently happening, right? And a special occasion would be an abstraction in your schedule anyway, right? Like when I'm working with a client and they say, I want to start working with you in December, I'm like, all right, we won't do theming yet. We'll wait till January because we know the holidays from the middle of November to the end of December is crazy. So you're going to be navigating all of that. Another thing that people don't take into account are and these are attention paths that I discuss as well, are the ones that are going to give you the quick wins and not just give you quick wins in terms of getting that quick dopamine hit, but get you out of jams when you're stuck, when you can't make progress. So I already mentioned low energy. So I would look at my list. If you're using a paper list, let's say you're using a tool like Notion or whatever, and you want to use emojis or field views and ClickUp, let's say. If you were to indicate your high energy tasks and low energy tasks, if you can determine whether energy plays a role or not, and don't go medium energy, it's either high or low. Use intensity if you want, but this is where you want a bit more binary because your brain likes that on, off, left, right, like leverage that. So if I was to look at my list today, which I will, and I say, I'm tired, what can I do when I'm tired? I can see that. I'm not looking at what those things are. I'm looking at, I'm tired. These are the things. I don't know what those things are yet. Oh, I'm really full of energy. I'm a night owl. It's 2 p.m. What are my high energy tasks? Oh, here they are. Don't know what those tasks are, but I do know that those are. And then I filtered my list from 83 things down to 12 just by that action alone. And now I'm looking at 12 tasks and I can make a better decision from those 12 as opposed to the larger amount. And then another way to do this, so that gets you out of jams quickly. I don't like to use energy as like a guide all day long because we don't get to, Eric, I don't think you get to answer the question, what do I feel like doing right?
We often have to do things at a time or an energy level that is not optimal. That's just the way life is.
Right. But knowing that allows you to categorize them that way. So that way you can say, okay, I just came out of something I didn't expect and I'm wiped out. What can I do now that I'm wiped out? Just because you know that you don't know when those things are going to pop up doesn't mean you can't prepare for it by having, a way to look at your energy regardless. Another thing, and this is definitely more quantitative, is using time not as how long will this take, but I know that these tasks are going to take 5 minutes or less, or between 6 and 15 minutes, or between 16 minutes and 25 minutes. Let's say, so you've got like a 5-minute block, a 15 and a 25. I'm going to use the Pomodoro technique because we're already geeking out anyway. So if I look at my task list and I say, I have low energy, but I can't take that into account. I want to get some quick wins. What are some 5-minute tasks? I can see those across all of my tasks and I can go bang, bang, bang. So let's say I'm between meetings, 30 minutes. Instead of going to my email, I'm going, let me look at my list and see how many 5-minute tasks I can bang out. And that means I'm listening to my own intentions because that's what productivity is. Your intention plus your attention and that circle continuously happening, that active link. I can go into that meeting going, guess what? I got 5 tasks done. I got 4 tasks done before going into the meeting. Instead of, I got that email and it's weighing on me. And you want to be primed and present for that meeting. get your own intentions out of the way. Those 3 things alone can get you started. It doesn't take much, just like an up arrow or down arrow tells you that. It's a signal. 5 minutes with a circle around it. 25 minutes. If you're like, hey, Mike, this is a 60-minute task. You know, my answer to that is it small enough? Did you make it small enough? Is it recurring? Do you ever get an hour of uninterrupted time? No. Okay, well then answer those questions, right? Like, instead of going, because we jump to judgment. Mike, I can't. This is going to take me 60 minutes. I don't get 60 minutes. Time is a stupid thing. Oh, hold up. Yeah. Work on book is number 1. Work is a terrible verb. Secondly, work on book for 60 minutes. What part of the book, right? Like, so you need to take that, like you said, take a step back and get some perspective on things. Those things that we are often told that the world doesn't give us time to do or to take or to align with. Yeah, we can take 30 seconds to step back. You know, we can take, it's that old story about the monk and the businessman, where the businessman said, I'm so overwhelmed. I know I need to meditate. How long do you think I should meditate for? And the monk said, and again, I'm paraphrasing, the monk said, well, you should meditate for 5 minutes a day. And he goes, I don't have time for that. And then the monk goes, well, then you should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Like, there's a reason you don't have time. It's because you're not making decisions properly that have put you in that position. And by the way, the decisions don't necessarily mean I'm making the choices to do these things. Sometimes the decisions are, I need to reassess my job situation here. I need to set better boundaries. I need to not send emails after 5 p.m. I can write them and send them later. That way I get the dopamine of it's done, but you're not going to send it at 5 p.m. because at 5:01 p.m. that client goes, oh, Mike's online. I'm going to talk to him. You want to set those boundaries. And those boundaries don't have to be overt. They can be quiet, especially if you don't feel that you want to announce them. These are things that we can do. And I think the key here, like anything else, is you add it bit by bit. Mm-hmm. I don't want someone to walk... When someone picks up this book, my goal is, and that's why I wanted to get this book out for a while. It's why it took a long time to get it out, because I had a lot of the philosophical wrapped up in here. I now will have another book that was born from some of the stuff that came out of this book. That's going to be the next thing that's going to come out. But you can read this and go, okay, well, I'm going to add this one attention path right now, and I'm going to start there. Or I'm going to theme one day of the week and start there. Don't try to theme 5 days a week and add all 4 types of attention. You do that, it's not going to work bit by bit. And this is what you want to do. This book will help you do it bit by bit, as opposed to listening to me talk about it or us in a workshop and you go, oh my God, Mike, slow down. There's too much. Yeah, all systems are too much if you try to take them all on at once. This is bit by bit.
Yeah. There's one small bit, and it's not small, but I want to spend a small amount of time on it because I think it makes sense to close with this, is as you were talking about what you were just talking about, I couldn't help but think that there's also one more piece that I would maybe suggest from what you talk about, which is this process of reflection, and even just that it doesn't have to be some drawn out thing, but it can be a micro moment that, again, you talked about the time that the world allows or the time that we choose to take, kind of like the meditation thing you mentioned. It's one of those things that can help you gain clarity quick, like with the asking questions, but you're asking them of yourself.
Right. Whenever I do a live session, I've done this on video, but it's way more effective live, is because I have a lot of people, that's one thing they'll say is, I don't have time to journal. I don't know how to journal. I don't know, what should I use? They get caught up in the minutia and in the myths. So often what I'll do is I'll say, we're going to do nothing for 60 seconds. And I ask people to put down their laptops. I ask them to keep their eyes open and not closed. And we're going to do nothing for a minute. And I do a little bit of stagecraft where I'll like look at my watch and walk around. And when that time is up, because I set a timer, when it's up, I ask people how they felt. And a lot of people say stressed, frazzled, waste of time, things of that nature. And then I ask how many people meditate, and I get a smattering of hands. And I'm like, did that feel like a minute to you? And they're like, no, it flew by. Like I didn't. But everybody else that was saying waste of time, frazzled, that time felt like it was creeping by. And then I tell them that it wasn't a minute. it was either 42 seconds or 38 seconds or 51 seconds. Like it wasn't, I never do a pure minute. And the demonstration of that is to show that not only are we terrible judges of the passage of time, because when we are not doing anything, time crawls. And when we're in flow, it flies by, right? So time dilation is real. And we, as we get older, obviously, I mean, there's research around time. We experience time differently. But I think the other thing to note is if that's 60 seconds and it's not even a full 60 seconds, and I told you it was going to be 60 seconds, if you took a full 60 seconds to just pause or to write in a journal or to write down your thoughts or just to step back and go, let me do a brain dump like a la David Allen style, you can do it. 60 seconds is a lot of time in the grand scheme of things, especially if you're doing nothing. So if you don't have time to journal, then I challenge that. And I also challenge the fact that if you, again, it always comes back to questions. If you are spending time on social media, Facebook, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, you are journaling for the world. And I would suggest that you journal for yourself.
Or reading someone else's.
Well, you're doing that too. That's the scrolling part. But if you're actually actively posting, then you're journaling for.
Well, a lot of people lurk, and that I would say is even more wasteful.
That is absolutely, because you're not getting anything out of it. I often, and I wrote a blog post about this. I don't know if you want to link to it in the show notes, but I talk about the spheres of attention in the book, and I talk about the news in your attention. And I also go into sports and entertainment, because the news is not just like the headlines, like the political news or what have you. Sports is going on year round. Like the NFL, I'm a Bengals fan, and there's an off season, but no one stops talking about the Bengals during the off season. Like it's still happening, right? But to what end? Like, why are you paying attention to that right now? Watching the NFL draft. I like doing that, but I don't need to. I could figure out who gets drafted. I could check it later, right? So my point is that if you spend 5 minutes a day journaling, and there is a journaling tool out there called the 5-minute journal, it is like 0.006% of your day or something. It's not even 1% of your day. Even if you sleep for 8 hours, it's still not 1% of your day. So to tell me that you can't set aside 1% of your day to get your thoughts out of your head and reflect, you're missing the point, because we are already reflecting anyways passively. Before and after every action, reflection takes place, right? In small, subtle ways. By putting it in front of you, you can do things like see patterns, course correct. If you hate doing the getting things done weekly review, journaling can help you with that, because you're not setting aside like one day for 4 hours to do it. Instead, you're doing 30 minutes at the most a day, over a 5-day, 7-day week, whatever. So I challenge anyone who has not started to journal to spend the next 30 days, just take 2 minutes to 5 minutes out of your day at the most to journal. Put it in an app. Apple has the apps built right in now. There's also Day One. There's also, I use a tool called Reflection. There's also physical journals as well that you could use. But do what James Clear does if you want. 1-line entries. Even James, when he was on my show, he said, I struggle with journaling. And he's the guy that wrote the book on habits that everyone follows. And that's a habit that can be a keystone one. So he writes 1-sentence journal entries. I have a journaling program that teaches you like different prompts associated with daily themes and all that stuff. So you can use prompts, or you could just look at your phone and go, what photos did I take today? Oh, there's a photo of my book launch party. That's what I'm going to riff on, and just practice that. It is a reflective practice. You're never going to get it perfect. You can perfect it, but there's no right or wrong way to do it. So just take a bit of time every single day. It'll reveal things to you. You'll see patterns, and you'll be able to make better choices because you are spending time with yourself, figuring yourself out and figuring out what goals you want, what metrics you need to measure. I guess if you want to put a full metaphor on it, it's like putting yourself on the scale every day to see your progress. Now, remember, the scale doesn't necessarily tell you the entire truth, because you could be gaining muscle and losing fat and the weight stays the same. But there's a larger story there. What's your BMI? What's all this stuff, right? So I think that taking a bit of time every day to do that, which is what you would do when you're trying to work out or lose weight, all you have to do is take a bit of time and it just compounds.
Mike, it's great talking to you always. We don't always record them. This one we did. Yep. I want to definitely send people to where, one, they can grab the book, two, they can find out more about all the different things you're doing, including the podcast and everything else. So
if you want to pick up the book, go to mikevardy.com/lit, L-I-T, which is short for literature. And my book is at the top of that page, along with my other books. You can also go on Amazon, buy it directly from Amazon, paperback or ebook. The audiobook is coming. I don't know if you can tell by my voice right now, but I've been having a bit of an illness. I know you, Eric, and you and I talked about it. Can't really record the audiobook when my voice is not at 100%. We're still waiting to get that done. If you want to keep up with my work, one of the best things you do is to sign up for my email newsletter, which is of mikevardy.com/light, L-I-G-H-T. I send a weekly newsletter called The Lantern, and it allows you to keep up with my work, my podcast. I share all that stuff through there. So again, mikevardy.com/light to sign up for my newsletter, and to get the book, mikevardy.com/lit.
I love the 1-2 punch of light and lit.
It's deliberate.
Mike, great to talk with you as usual. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
Well, that's another podcast crossed off your listening to-do list. There is always so much more to dive into with Mike when we talk, but I'll leave you with this for now. And again, go to the link in the show notes. You can find the link to his book, The Productivity Diet. Grab that. Trust me, there's so much more to dive into with him there in that book. And if you found this episode helpful, would you do Mike and I a favor by sharing it with somebody you know needs to hear it? Hit that share button in your podcast player app of choice, or again, over in those show notes, wherever you are listening to this. Thank you so much for sharing. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you next episode.